Good morning guys, I hope you're all having an awesome day and welcome back to the videos. Today we are in my R33 Skyline. Now very recently, over the past couple of months, I've sort of been tossing and turning on where I want this build to go. Do I want to, do I want to build it with extremely expensive parts straight off the bat? Or would I prefer to learn and figure out why cheaper parts are cheaper in the first place? Back when I was younger, and probably until I was about 17 years old, I hadn't really ever taken a tool to a car. And so, buying parts just based off everyone else's review on them was always just the norm. I'd go out and see on Club FG that everyone rates XYZ coilovers, and I would just go to the first place that has them cheap enough and buy them without sort of doing my own research. I thought with this R33 that I would try something a little bit different and test a lot of things that I've always wanted to test. I have forever seen that people have been having the worst luck with cheaper turbos or eBay turbos or who knows. But then I got approached by MaxPeedingRods. So I got to talking with MaxPeedingRods Australia, and they decided to send me out a turbo to test out. This turbo right here, I'll leave a link for it down below, is their RB25 bolt-on turbo kit. Now I don't know about you guys, but that sound is pretty sick for a sub $300 bolt-on turbo. Now this thing here is so cool. Now I wanted to sort of get into my initial sort of view on the turbo. I've now had it for around about 3 days since we've sort of had it tuned. I think it would have been 4 or 5 days since we've had it tuned, but I haven't driven it every single day. 3rd day driving the turbo. And my initial reaction is this thing sounds sick, and it actually performs surprisingly well for a sub $300 turbo. Now this turbo isn't ball bearing or anything fancy. It is a very generic journal bearing turbo, but after chatting to a few people, and especially the guys at Lep Labs, he actually had this turbo right here on his RB30, and it actually lasted a surprisingly long time. And originally I was always looking at, whether I go Garrett or Borg Warner or Precision or even Mamba for a turbo for this car right here, because I had felt Sam set up over in Japan and I really wanted to replicate that setup in Australia. But after I got the email from MaxPeedingRods and having a chat to the guys down at Onsong, they actually rate these turbos kind of high. And I thought there is no harm in trying out a turbo and just seeing how it goes. Hey, if we have to take it off in a month's time, so be it. There's some content there. We can have some good fun with it. But in all fairness, I am ultra surprised with this turbo kit. So the boys down at Onsong Performance ended up putting this turbo on my car, and there was a little bit of stuff involved with getting it to fit. So one thing we had to change was the oil drain. So pretty much one of the housing bolts normally gets in the way of where it drains into. So unfortunately we had to modify that, but that was pretty much it. Everything bolted up directly. And I'm also keeping in mind that I have the stock manifold, the stock exhaust manifold, and the stock dump, and just I think it's a Jasma exhaust. So there's nothing really crazy or high flying about this setup right here. Plus the intercooler piping is also pretty small. So this turbo right here on MaxPeedingRods website is rated to 21 PSI. Obviously we're not going to be going with crazy horsepower. We just wanted a nice little reliable daily /3 car / strip car. So, we weren't going to be pushing it crazy. We weren't going to be pushing it to 21 PSI. There's no way. Maybe when I get my new turbo system, then I can do that. But that's in a couple of months' time. I'm going to see how long this thing goes for. So anyway, yes, 21 PSI is definitely not something we wanted to go with. We opted to go with 16 PSI. And all in all, my initial reaction with the dyno tune, I'll quickly show you guys a clip right now of what it was like on the dyno.
We're out of turbo, that's all.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, you got a pretty good power range,
that 4 to 6 bracket.
Yeah, you got a good power curve there. It is holding on pretty well.
Yep.
It'd be a good car to drive.
Yeah, certainly.
Again, it's sort of stock cams, stock exhaust manifold.
That's it.
Your turbo's much better than a stock one, but you're still fairly restricted.
Yeah, especially with that dump. You know, you saw how close that. Where the thing comes out.
It's all quite restricted.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, you don't like even. You could go pumping a gem at a bit more PSI and like get a peak torque.
Yep.
It's not going with the higher RPM. You could jam more boost in there, but you're pushing stuff uphill. But
that's it. That's exactly right.
You're making it less reliable.
Yep.
What you really want is just a nice reliable car to get seat time.
That's it. So exactly right, and that's what it is.
We're not jamming heaps of timing in this thing. It's got a fair bit of back pressure.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. It's got to be a nice, reliable, good car. 270 horsepower, still plenty. Mark 31 used to make 255.
Yep. And it sounds cool. Turbo sounds pretty sick. From the front, it sounds amazing.
Yeah. A bit of dose. No, it should be pretty reliable at that. Being the MaxPeedingRods turbo, they're not massively efficient. So you start trying to push them out of their efficiency, you start getting bad results very fast. So I'm happy at that 16 pound. I want to leave it there.
Yep.
Go do some driving.
Yeah, sounds good. Woohoo! This thing was surprisingly responsive. It hit really hard, really fast, and went straight to 16 PSI. And then around the 5 to 5.5 mark, that's when we started to notice its loss in efficiency. It was starting to drop off and taper off to around about, let's say, I think it was around about 10 PSI or 11 PSI that it started to drop off down to. Also keep in mind the fact that with Max, he actually ended up porting the rear housing just a little smidge, simply because the actual gate itself was smaller than the stock turbo, so we ended up porting that out, and it definitely helped a fair bit. I won't lie, it's done everything it's needed to so far, and especially for drifting, it has an extremely nice power curve, sort of between the 3 to 4 to 6 mark. Like it's a really nice linear power curve, and for that drift event the other night, it was actually really cool. So this thing ended up making only 270 horsepower, which, because I was only going to try and drift the stock setup, I was completely fine with. But hey, you know what, in the future I probably might want to push it a little bit further, you know, go with a high mount turbo setup or do something, but at this current point in time, I'm super stoked with this little turbo. Did I mention the noise? Oh my god. This thing has honestly been a better sounding turbo setup than any of the cars that I've had. It sounds so sick. So at this current point in time, I honestly cannot fault the MaxPeedingRods turbo at all. Like, it has been such a cool sounding and actually, to be honest, surprisingly responsive little turbo. I'll be entirely honest, yes, it did fall off on the dyno just a smidge, and they weren't able to hold that exact 16 PSI all the way through our rev range, even though we sort of built it in pretty quickly. I am honestly, genuinely surprised at how awesome this little turbo is. Slightly bigger than the standard turbo. It has a slightly bigger rear housing, slightly bigger front housing, and yes, we did port out that gate just a little bit, but for the little tiny modifications we had to do and how much harder and how much more efficient it hits than the stock turbo system, for sub $300, I cannot complain with this turbo whatsoever. So I'm just here at Super Cheap at the moment. I have to go get some interior paint for the Falcon. So when I get back, I'll set up the GoPro on the front and we can do some little pulls here and there, and you guys can just hear this turbo because it sounds so sick. Yeah. I will admit, for a two-way, this Nismo dip, it's so nice to drive. Oh yeah, don't mind the check engine light either. That's just that faulty temp sensor, which I'm going to get replaced, but the car runs fine, so don't stress. Obviously I'm not going to go crazy hard because it's just the street, We don't want to do anything on the street. I want to keep my license nice and clean like it is. I'm sorry for all you guys that want to go out there and make me lose my license. Not gonna happen.